In Côte d'Ivoire, an 83-year-old president is making a calculated move to secure a fourth term in office, despite having once championed term limits. President Alassane Ouattara's decision comes after a constitutional change he himself orchestrated reset the clock on his rule, a move his critics call a flagrant power grab. The political gambit has ignited a firestorm as the country's electoral commission has simultaneously barred his most formidable opponent from the upcoming October 2025 elections, including a former president and a globally recognized ex-CEO. In response, thousands have poured into the streets of Abidjan, the economic capital, chanting "Enough is enough" and demanding a fair and inclusive vote. The stage is set for a high-stakes confrontation that threatens the stability of West Africa's economic powerhouse. In this episode, we are going to dive deep into how President Alassane Ouattara maneuvered his way into a fourth-term bid, why the opposition is uniting in mass protest, and what this showdown means for the future of democracy, not just in Ivory Coast, but across Africa. The political tension in Ivory Coast boiled over on August 9, 2025, when thousands of citizens took to the streets of Abidjan. This wasn't just a small gathering. It was a powerful, coordinated display of public anger. Waving the orange, white, and green national flag alongside party banners, protesters marched to the sound of drums. Their message clear and unified. Chants of "We don't want a fourth term" echoed through the street. The core demands were simple: reinstate the opposition leaders who have been disqualified from the presidential race and ensure a credible election. One activist summed up the mood perfectly, stating, "We want all candidates' names included and want to go to the elections in peace." This protest was more than just a political rally. It was a festival of defiance. Onlookers filmed on their phones, with some spontaneously joining the march, moved by the energy. It represents a critical moment where ordinary Ivorians are loudly signaling to the ruling establishment that the upcoming elections' legitimacy is on the line, and they will not be silent spectators. In the heart of the protest is the controversial exclusion of 4 of the country's most prominent opposition figures. The Electoral Commission has effectively cleared the field of President Alassane Ouattara's strongest challengers. Among them is Tidjane, a world-renowned technocrat and former CEO of Credit Suisse. After winning the primary for the main opposition PDCI party, he was struck off the voter roll on a technicality because he held a French Ivorian citizenship at the time of registration, even though he later renounced it. Thiam called the move a sad but telling example of Ivory Coast's abandonment of democracy. Also bad is the 78-year-old former president Laurent Gbagbo, along with his ally Charles Bloodshed. Despite being acquitted of crimes against humanity by the International Criminal Court, past domestic convictions are being used to block their candidacy. A fourth rival, former Prime Minister Guillaume Soro, remains in exile after a coup plot conviction his supporters says was politically motivated. The opposition sees this as a calculated legal strategy to ensure an easy victory for the incumbent, a tactic they warn will rob the October election of any credibility and fairness. So, why is President Alassane Ouattara at 83 running again? His justification rests on a controversial constitutional reform he pushed through in 2016. According to Ouattara and his ruling RHDP party, that new constitution effectively reset the presidential term count, making his 2020 victory his first term under the new system and rendering him eligible for 2 more. This is a sharp reversal from his previous statement about the need for a new generation of leaders. The president now argues that duty sometimes take precedence over a promise, citing serious security and economic challenges facing the nation. His camp portrays him as the only figure with the experience and stability to guide Ivory Coast through turbulent times, pointing to a decade of relative peace and economic growth under his leadership. At a recent party congress, he was unanimously nominated as the RHDP candidate, with supporters carrying banners declaring "Our champion is ADO," using his initials. The message is clear. Ouattara is presenting himself as indispensable for the country's progress and stability, a narrative that his critics call a convenient excuse to cling to power. While Ouattara's camp projects an image of inevitable victory, the opposition is refusing to go down without a fight. Facing a clean sweep of their top candidates, the 2 largest opposition parties have done something remarkable. They've joined forces. Laurent Gbagbo's PPACI party and Thiam's PDCI have formed what they call the Common Front. Their goal is singular and non-negotiable: force the government to hold a truly inclusive election. This alliance isn't just a press release, it's a movement on the ground, organizing the mass protests that have shaken Abidjan. At the rallies, leaders from both parties share the stage, firing up the crowd with powerful speeches. One PPACI leader called Ouattara's expected fourth term unconstitutional and framed the peaceful marches as a final warning to those in power. Their banner is inclusive elections or nothing. Beyond the street, they are pushing legal avenues, with Tidjane vowing to take his case to the UN Human Rights Committee. This united front has transformed the political landscape, turning individual grievances into a cohesive and formidable challenge to Ouattara's authority. The struggle for Ivory Coast's future is being fought as fiercely online as it is on the street. Social media platforms like X, Facebook, and TikTok have become a battleground for public opinion, revealing a nation deeply polarized. Hashtags like Ivory Coast Election 2025 are trending, filled with videos of the protests and passionate commentary. Many Africans across the continent are cheering on the protesters. One user wrote, "These multiple mandates in Côte d'Ivoire and in Cameroon are a disgrace to Africa's political systems," linking the Ivorian struggle to a broader fight against lifelong presidencies. On the other side, Ouattara's supporters are pushing back hard. They flood social media with images of new roads and infrastructure, crediting the president for a decade of peace and development. ADO is a Democrat. He even allowed the march, one supporter argued, contrasting it with crackdowns elsewhere. They framed the opposition as agents of chaos, warning that only Ouattara can prevent the country from sliding back into conflict. This digital war of narratives, stability versus democracy, experience versus change, captures the deep divisions tearing the fabric of Ivorian society. To understand why the current tension is so alarming, you have to look back to 2010. After a disputed election that year, Ivory Coast plunged into a brutal 5-month civil war. The conflict pitted supporters of Laurent Gbagbo against those of Alassane Ouattara, and it left over 3,000 people dead, tearing the nation apart. The scars from that war has never been fully healed. Now, with the same two political titans, Ouattara and Gbagbo, at the center of a new electoral crisis, the fear of history repeating itself is palpable. The 2020 election, when Ouattara ran for his contested third term, also saw deadly clashes, though on a smaller scale. This history of election-related violence is why the current standoff is so dangerous. Every political maneuver, every protest, and every hardline statement from the government is viewed through the lens of this traumatic past. While Ouattara's government vows that force will remain with the law to prevent unrest, many Ivorians worry that by excluding major political players, the government is creating the very conditions for the instability it claims to be preventing. The stakes aren't just political, they are existential. The crisis in Ivory Coast sends ripples far beyond its borders. As the world's top cocoa producer and a regional economic hub, any instability in Abidjan could cripple economies across West Africa. The implications are even deeper. Ouattara's fourth-term bid is part of a worrying thread of constitutional coups across the continent, where leaders will write the rules to extend their power. While nations like Senegal recently saw a president step down after 2 terms, leaders in Togo, Cameroon, and Equatorial Guinea have been in power for decades. The outcome in Ivory Coast will send a powerful message. A successful fourth term for Ouattara could embolden other leaders to do the same. Conversely, a victory for the opposition demands for an inclusive election could inspire pro-democracy movements elsewhere. International powers, especially former colonizer France, are watching nervously. A major conflict could fuel anti-French sentiment, similar to what has been seen in Mali and Niger. Ultimately, Ivory Coast stands at a crossroads, a microcosm of the continent-wide struggle between entrenched leadership and a young, dynamic population demanding change and accountability. This is Frontline Africa. If you value truth unfiltered and power reframed from an African perspective, subscribe, like, and drop your thoughts in the comments. I am Ezekiel Enejeta. See you in the next one.